Season 4 is dropping in with all of the details that you need to know to decide if you're gonna play or not, because we have big gear changes, big dungeon changes, pretty big raid changes. Talk about how the legendaries will work if you have yours or if you want yours, tier sets, omni tokens, and everything that you want in what's looking probably the best Dragonflight season yet, maybe the best season in the last couple of expansions. To start it off, we're gonna be looking at the dungeons as well. Now, I think last week or 2 weeks ago, we talked about the dungeon revamps that they're doing and the way that the difficulty works. And this is all well and good when it comes to Heroic and Mythic Zeros being a little bit more impactful in terms of providing you with gear upgrade options, especially when it comes to getting a higher eye level overall character. However, the eye levels across the board will be increased anyway. So what really matters is the fact that Mythic Plus will have its affixes placed on +2, 5, and 10 instead of +2, 7, and 14, which are now currently, making them slightly harder, the dungeons themselves, which is a contrast to what we've had in Season 3, where the dungeons were easier than Season 2, which was easier than Season 1, which I suspect was a big contributor to getting more people into Mythic Plus. So I'm not yet sold on how the Mythic Plus system will work, but the good thing about it is that when it comes to rewarding crests and everything that you're going to be using for upgrading your items, Mythic Plus 2 will start just rewarding worm crests off the bat, so you don't have to go through the entire crest system to get your gear. Now, if you're just farming like average to high-end level gear, which is probably what most people would want to get anyway, this is most likely better, since you will have access to useful crests instead of having to waste all of your time on whelps and drake crests and things like that, which is obviously really good, since it makes it a little bit simpler to actually gear your character instead of having to learn what level at which Mythic Plus do you stop getting whelps and you start getting drakes. So actually you used to only get drakes, not whelps anymore, or did you? I don't even know. That's how convoluted it is, and you have to go through all of that crest system, but that's gone. You just have worms and aspects insofar that we know at the moment. And of course, if you've missed any prior news regarding the Mythic Plus dungeon pool in the next season, we're gonna have all of the Dragonflight dungeons confirmed and actually tuned. Actually, some pretty good tuning changes, which I'm not going to go into right now because there's going to be so many more in the next couple of weeks, since we're actually going to have Mythic Plus testing this week, which we're also going to do on stream. We can check it out and, you know, hop in some keys with us. But since a lot of things will change, it's pointless to put it out now. Let's just kind of take a more abstract view of the thing, that the dungeons will just get better and more fun, also easier, because most of these so far seem to be nerfs on top of the multiple trinket reworks from the dungeon set pool that we've talked about, or that we mentioned rather last week, which I'm still not going to mention now because once again, these will constantly change. Again, the takeaway is they're gonna probably be more competitive or more interesting to use and not be super annoying or useless, because gearing actually matters in the next season. Obviously, it matters in all seasons. However, we have confirmed that we will have the dinar system that we had in Shadowlands. Now, if you haven't played Shadowlands, you might not know what I'm talking about. Essentially, what this means is that you will be able to loot a specific currency that, by doing the Season 4 content, that you can use to buy gear, mostly raid gear. But if we're gonna use Shadowlands last season as an example, we're likely going to just see a lot of raid gear in terms of trinkets, maybe cantrip weapons, aka weapons that have a specific effect, that are specifically cool and not just stat sticks. We can assume that the dinar system, or the new name is Antique Bronze Bullion. Dinar was so much easier to say. Why? Anyway, now with the new bullion / dinar system, as much as we know so far, you'll be able to acquire gear and be able to upgrade it to the max seasonal eye level instead of what we had before, and you will not need to actually clear a set amount of heroic or mythic bosses to be able to acquire those eye levels in your upgrade system like we had back in Shadowlands, but you'll be able to have access to those by just, you know, having the actual currency, which is of course still crests. And we will have a new track of upgrading items, which is the Awakened track, which has 14 ranks. Well, actually it has 12 ranks for normal items up until eye level 528. And for the last couple of high levels, 532 and 535 will be reserved for specific end raid boss items like those special trinkets and rings that always dropped at a higher item level than all of the other items in the raid. Stuff like the Seal of Filial Duty, Nelthorax, which is the Hunter Bow, confirmed to be a 532, most likely the best ranged weapon period. The Cloak from Sarkareth, the Class Trinkets from Neltharion, the Trinkets from Fyr'alath, and so on. Which, actually, maybe not so on. I think these are all of them that can go to 535. And with these, we can probably assume that the Legendary will go to that eye level as well. The Legendaries have been confirmed for a while that they will be relevant in Season 4 in two ways. First of all, you'll still be able to loot the Legendaries, which is important for people who haven't gotten their Legendary yet. Maybe you want to work on it now, since, for instance, if you're an Evoker and you want a Juro, it's probably easier to do Abyss now than it would be next season. Although next season you can do Abyss on both the new Fated, which we're gonna go to it, level of the raid, or the old one, which is going to be tremendously easier. Either way, you'll be able to still acquire the Legendaries as normal, and on top of it, if you have the Legendary now, or if you are looting it, you'll be able to also purchase the Scale of Awakening with the Bullion, which will first take your Legendary to 502 item level, after which you'll be able to use Crests as normal to upgrade the Legendary as you would any regular item. Which is great because it doesn't imply another farms of Super Bloom and paying hundreds of thousands of gold on the auction house for materials. You'll just be able to upgrade it, which is great. It's something that I advocated of having from the beginning, so we don't have to do this convoluting grinding system that was a little bit boring and tedious and also very expensive. Choose one, tedious or expensive. Both are but we can assume that the Legendaries will get to at least 528 as a normal item, and since Legendaries usually have higher item level than everything else, and the end boss trinkets and rings and all of that are 535, we can probably assume that they're gonna go a little bit higher, maybe close to 540, since Legendaries are historically the highest item level item in the game. Which, you know, is great, because Legendaries are cool, and if you have yours, then rejoice, you'll still be able to use it. You don't need to reform it or recraft it or anything like that. On top of all of this, of course, we will have the new Omni token that will drop from the raids in the new season. And going into this, the new raids are basically the Dragonflight raids, but they will have the Awakened status, which is what Shadowlands had for their Fated raids. Now we will call them Awakened raids. And they will rotate, as contrary to what we believed a week or two ago, where it seemed like they will all be available at all times. But nope, they will be on rotation. So 1 week we will have Awakened the Mirdrasil, where we're gonna fight the new raid on the Awakened difficulty, which is, you know, higher than what the current Mirdrasil is, but also rewards all the new gears and new eye levels. Same with Vault of the Incarnates and Abyss. They will go on a week-by-week rotation, which is something that's a little bit controversial because not a lot of people vibed with this. On one hand, you would just have to like reprogress every raid every week, and then you have about 2 weeks pause in actually playing the raid because you're just going through the other two, and then you have to go back into it and kind of remember the mechanics. On the plus side, the way Shadowlands dealt with this, not as successfully as maybe some people would have liked, so maybe we'll see it done a little bit better this time. We had certain affixes in the raids that essentially trivialized the fight to a large extent, to the point where you could just kill like higher difficulty bosses way more than in a regular season of raid pushing, meaning that the Awakened raids are probably going to get significantly easier the more we go into the season, the more gear you get, and the more these affixes are going to end up stacking if they're going to do the same thing, which I think they should, because keeping the same level of difficulty on Awakened raids as opposed to normal raids, you just, I mean, there's not enough time because there's no consistent progress on it, since you have to wait 2 weeks on a pause rotation to get back into the same raid before, or reprogress 3 raids in the same season. That's just a little bit too much. So most likely they're going to be relegated to fun style content, where just go in, smash bosses, have loot, which is ironically some of the most fun times I have had raiding in Shadowlands, and definitely it's looking like it's going to be one of the most fun times raiding in Dragonflight either, which probably says something about raid design in general. But we're not going to go into that anymore. The Omni token will also be rewarded from the raids, and you'll get it and you'll be able to purchase the new tier. Now, as you may have been aware of, the new tier sets that we're going to have in Season 4 have been voted on by the community, which is something that has never happened before. Because in Shadowlands, we only had tier set in the last raid, so that was the only tier set that we were going to play with in the season. But now, since we've had 3 raids worth of tier sets, players have voted on their respective tier bonus for each spec and also tier appearance for each spec. So you might get a Abyss tier bonus with a Vault of the Incarnate aspect on it from the actual vendor, which, I mean, it's great. It's great that we've been given this power to choose our own fate for next season, and the majority of players have voted for the strongest and in some cases the most fun tier set that they have had through Dragonflight, which is great. If we're not going to have a new raid with a new tier set, might as well let us choose the one that we enjoyed the most over the course of Dragonflight, which I think is a pretty good idea considering, and I do feel like I need to say this because some people still don't get it yet, Season 4 is not a new raid tier. It's essentially filler content to keep us in for War Within. Sure, it would be nice to not need this and just get a new raid or just get War Within quicker. I agree, but we don't really live in that world, and instead of having a Mirdrasil for 6 more months, or no, maybe 5 more months until War Within hits, I'd rather just play through all-time bestsellers or best hits of Dragonflight and just go through that content a little bit easier with a little bit more power, which is the power fantasy that people enjoy in RPGs, and that's what you're gonna be doing in Season 4, which, that's great. I mean, I love it. Hopefully you love it too. And now, on top of all of this, which is something that we don't usually cover, there's plenty of achievements, mounts, and transmogs that you can earn through different style of contents, meta achievements, and so on that have been confirmed as well. One thing that I do have to point out is that you will have access to portals to these specific raids, which is great, but they will only be available if you clear them on Mythic. Which, on one hand, I understand, it kind of goes hand in hand with the Mythic plus dungeon portals. Normally, if you clear them on plus 20, you get a portal to that dungeon, which is a great little reward for people who actually push themselves to clear the highest level of content, which is great. I personally hoped that this reward for the raid would be put on normal difficulty for most people, since I don't really see the intrinsic value of having a portal for a mythic raid, because once you clear the raid on mythic difficulty, the incentive to go back is way lower than somebody that has cleared it on normal and maybe would want to go further into heroic and then eventually maybe mythic. So I see that these portal rewards could be a little bit more redundant than they are in Mythic Plus, because Mythic Plus as a game mode is essentially made to be spammable, while raids are not really meant to be spammable. You go in a raid, you clear the boss, and usually that's it for a lot of people, or you maybe want to get that one item that's missing and then you're done. That's not the case for Mythic Plus, so it works in Mythic Plus to get a portal a little bit later, since you end up playing even more after you get those portals for the majority of the time. But as far as raids are concerned, usually I don't see myself wanting to clear a Mirdrasil Mythic a second time after I cleared it once, especially since I have to wait 2 more weeks to do it. As just, I don't know, I'll probably be playing War Within Alpha, which was probably going to come soon anyway. But Season 4, with all of the changes to the dungeons, to the gear, to the accessibility, and to the player power, is looking to be the best season that we've had so far. We'll see how it plays out, because the game is actually doing better, since weirdly enough, the devs are listening to people and they're kind of making changes to the game to bring it into a better state, which is something that Asmongold kind of talked about, and we made a video about it that you can check right here and see if the man is right and if the game needs to change into a different direction that a lot of people disagree with to become more popular, more played, and bring more players in.